Hello, and welcome to Rogue Group Workshop. I'm your host, Lieutenant Horn, with the Terrain Showcase. If you enjoy my content, please remember to like and subscribe. Comments are always welcome. Today I'll be presenting the Outer Rim Territories bundle from War Scenery. Now this bundle can be purchased when you back any of War Scenery's Kickstarters as an addition, or you can purchase these models individually on War Scenery's website. If you decide to purchase these models off the website individually, use this discount code, ROWGroup20, as you can see on the screen, for a 20% discount on all models purchased through their website. Now, this review is not sponsored by War Scenery. They do not have any bearing on my opinions on their models and what I'm going to have to say. I purchased these models myself. They were not given to me or gifted to me in any way. Now, this set is being reviewed as it regards to the game Star Wars Legion, but these models can also be used for any other tabletop game or D&D and RPG games. Now, the models have interior details in them, as you can see in the example on the screen. And you won't see them in this review as I glued the roofs on each of the buildings to ease in transport. In Star Wars Legion, you don't really use the interior of the buildings unless you're playing something like Spec Ops or some kind of story-based map. But in competitive play, you do not use the interior of buildings. So I won't be reviewing that portion of these models here. Now, when you purchase this bundle, there are basically two tables that come with it. One is very linear and has a lot of verticality to it, and that is going to be the more urban models. And then you also have ones that are more frontiery, and those are very asymmetrical for the most part. The frontier ones will be painted red in this review, and then you'll have the gray buildings will be the more urban table. Now, I prefer the frontier look. It kind of reminds me of something you would see on some backwater planet. But you can also make these models fit any kind of battlefield that you want based on how you paint them. So here you'll see an example of the more urban buildings, but it looks like it's out in the desert. And that's just going to be based on how you want to paint them. You don't have to paint them the way I did. You don't have to paint them the way the renders look. You can paint them however you want. So with that, I'm going to start the showcase review for each model. So you'll get the name, the filament used, and the print time and the number of plates. And you'll get my opinions and how they pertain to Star Wars Legion play. Now, to note, I use a Bamboo Labs P1S printer, so all the print times and filament usage will be based off of that. Another note is War Scenery's models do not need supports. They design them specifically so they'll need no to very minimal supports. And it's a fantastic way to design terrain in that you are wasting very little filament, if any at all, and it does speed up the print times as well. So War Scenery does that with all of their models, at least all the ones that I've printed out, and it's something that I like about their models. It's one of the reasons why I invest in their Kickstarters. Another thing to note is you'll see a lot of the antennas on my buildings are broken and or missing, and the reason is that when I transport these buildings or during gameplay, they just seem to break off. We'll hit them with hands, or they'll get bumped by other train pieces in the box. Now, War Scenery has improved upon this with their future releases, such as the Rebel Command Base, where the antennas are attached with a connector system. And that way, if you bump it, the antenna or other feature will just pop right off. You can just plug it back in. So you will see that in future videos when I review some of their newer models. But as for this, that's the reason why the antennas are missing from a majority of the buildings that I have here. So with that, we'll start the showcase. Barricades. It takes 17 grams of filament to print one single and one double at the same time. Print time is 1 hour and 10 minutes on a single plate. Now these are just basic barricades. They can replace the ones that you already use in the game. There's not a whole lot of detail to them, and that's what you want. You want the print time to be low, the filament amount to be low, and they are just a barricade. They're shorter than a standard mini, and they do the job that they're supposed to do. Next up is Beta House. This building uses 314 grams of filament and has an 8-hour, 40-minute print time on a single plate. Now, this building does breach the height 1 limit, but unlike the other buildings in this set, you are not able to place an emplacement trooper on the lower level. And that is just because the profile of the mini will overhang the edges of the building. But you are able to place an emplacement trooper on top, not just in one direction, placed in multiple different ways, without overhanging the edges. So you can still use the upper level for placing your emplacement trooper. So this building would be great if you are using it for prepared positions on your Mark II or something similar. This building is also great as a sniper's nest for Bosk, Gar Saxon. It's also great for if you want to set up maybe Boba Fett or some other mini on top. It does block line of sight for ATRTs on the lower level in other vehicles of similar size or smaller. And although it is a small profile building, it's rectangular, because of its different features above ground level, it just adds a different experience to your battlefield compared to the other buildings. So I'm going to go ahead and bring it in for more details here. As you can see, there's canopies inside. There's your door. So I enjoy this building mainly because it's small. It's not a very large building. It's just tall, and the verticality it brings to the battlefield really makes the game more enjoyable. Next up is the Epsylon House. This building uses 230 grams of filament and has a 6-hour and 35-minute print time on a single plate. Now this building is under height 1, and it is on the small side compared to the other buildings in this set. As you can see with the minis here, it's not very tall, and just to let you see how it is on height 1. And it's not very wide. You can put a squad, maybe 2, behind one side to hide it from your enemy. Now it is tall enough to block line of sight for an ATRT or smaller vehicle, but the roof is not wide enough to allow an ATRT on top without having the base overhanging. So it's not going to be a legal move for you to put them up there. Now you will be able to put up mortar troopers or your Mark IIs on top of this building, but you won't be able to put anything larger than that up there. Now, this building, even though small, does have a decent amount of detail, especially with these little canopies overhanging here. This is all one piece except for the canopies. Everything else is just printed. The walls is one piece, or the base, the roof's another, and the antenna is also separate. So this is something where you won't have a lot of pieces to assemble. Now, I do like this building just because it's small. I'm usually not a fan of just standard rectangular buildings, but because it's small, it allows you to place it in places where larger buildings and terrain pieces just don't make a lot of sense. Next up is Heta House. This building uses 390 grams of filament and has a 10-hour, 30-minute print time across 2 plates. Now, this building is both under and over height 1, depending on which part of the building you're trying to use. And it's just a nice rectangular building. It's tall, it's lean, and it's going to provide height options in your battlefield, especially since it's beyond height 1. Now here's an ATRT for scale as well, so it does block line of sight from the lower level and the upper level. This is also going to be great for your smaller vehicles like your X-34 land speeder, and depending on how you have it set up, maybe your gav tank. Now the top is not wide enough to fit an FD laser cannon, but you will be able to fit your spider droids and your crab droids and other similar base size minis. Um, I do like this building. I like the detail on it, um, mainly because of all these little canopies or blinds, whatever you want to call them. And you also have these little open windows here. And it's just nice to have something that's small, relatively small, but a tall building nonetheless. And I do like having height options, especially if you've got something like your Mandos or your Jedi or anything that has range, and having that extra height will give you some options on the battlefield. Next up is the Iota House. This building uses 370 grams of filament and has a 10-hour print time on a single plate. Now this building is both over and under height 1, depending on which part of the building you're using. And it does provide line of sight blocking capabilities for ATRTs and smaller for the lower and upper sections. Now this building is not large enough to fit an ATRT base on top without having it overhang or not sit flush, which means you can't place it there. So you'll be stuck with your smaller emplacement troopers for the upper levels, or your standard minis and squads. Now, this building is oblong, which is fantastic for multiple reasons. One of which is that you can stack smaller squads on the small end and larger squads on the other, so you can use both sides of the building and allow you to attack from different directions. Because it's over height 1, that means that your jump abilities are going to be really useful in clearing this building if you don't want to have to go around. Because it's long, you will have a longer movement required to go around the building. Now there's a decent amount of detail here, as on all the other buildings. It's got 2 doors, some awnings. It's even got a light up sign on the back end, which again, I'm not great at it, but it's just my attempt. So again, this is a building. It's got 2 levels of height, which I love. I like when you can bring more verticality to your matches. And because it's oblong, it's not just something where you can attack the same way from one side or the other. So this is a great addition to your battlefield, and it looks great on the mat. Next up is the Lambda House. Now this building uses 485 grams of filament and has a 13-hour print time across 2 plates. This building does break the height 1 barrier, and again provides a verticality to your battlefield. Now, I like this building a lot because it's asymmetrical. As you can see, it's got this cutout here on the back end. And so that does change the way that you might approach this building with your units. Now, because it's wide on the other edges, you are able to group more than one squad on either end. And you can even use it to stage individual minis or your heroes, say Anakin or Ahsoka, or anybody else who you use to dive in on the back end to hop over this building in one movement and attack units on the other side. Now, it is tall enough to provide line of sight blocking capabilities to vehicles as tall as an ATRT or shorter, and it does block for other vehicles, say Gav tank, if you don't have it completely lengthwise across the base. It can even block for an air speeder on the back end, so you can stage an air speeder for an attack, or any other kind of speeder, bark speeder, ISPs, X-34s, etc. And I really like this piece. It's got a lot of detail on it, and it just adds more to the battlefield, especially since it's a larger piece, so it allows you to base other things around it. So here we go with more view. We got 2 tables here, and got some signage on the back. Got signage on the front, and your awnings at the top. So again, really like this piece. I'd say this is one of the top 5 pieces of this set, and highly recommend that you print this out and add it to your collection. Next up is the Theta House. This building uses 260 grams of filament and has a 7-hour and 20-minute print time on a single plate. Now, this building is both under and over height 1, as you can see, depending on which part of the building you're using. And it does provide line of sight blocking capabilities for ATRTs or smaller for the lower level. Now, the upper level does not allow enough space for you to put an ATRT or similar size base on top, and that is because it's just too small for the base to not be overhanging the edges. Now, again, this is another piece that allows you to add some verticality to your battlefield, and it's mainly for your heroes that have snipers, say maybe Gar Saxon or maybe a Bosk. They would be great to put on top here. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here so you can see the details of the building. Double doors on the front there. You wonder if this is a duplex. As you can see here, I did not attach the umbilicals to this building. I don't like using the umbilicals just because it's just another piece to break. But if you are looking for something that's thematic, like as in you're taking pictures and stuff, the umbilicals definitely add to the theme of this set. So if that's your thing, go ahead and print them out, attach them, and if not, then do what I do and don't worry about it. Now, next up is the mini houses. These buildings use 215 grams of filament and have a 4-hour, 30-minute print time across a single plate. Now, as you can see, I did not print the umbilical connector between the two buildings, and that's just because it's something that I would easily break, and I didn't want to have to fool with it. But there are 2 footbridge options you can use along with any of the buildings in the set, and that allows you to link 2 buildings together as so. Now, these buildings are just wide enough to fit an emplacement trooper on top without the edges overhanging, and just to give you a more sense of scale with the buildings here. They are just tall enough to block line of sight for an ATRT, although the larger mini house will block line of sight for the whole vehicle, whereas the smaller one is not wide enough to block line of sight for an ATRT, but anything smaller than that, it will. These buildings are great in that they are small. They are tall enough to block line of sight for a mini or for a squad, and you can just place them wherever you need extra terrain or buildings or verticality in your battlefield, and that's basically what these are for. They're not for anything large. They're just there to add cover when you need it or height when you need it without taking up a large amount of space. Next up is Scattered Terrain Set 3. This set used 225 grams of filament and had a 14-hour, 45-minute print time across 2 plates. Now, as you can see, I don't have the moisture evaporator, as I use the ones that came with the FFG expansion, but I did print out the fuel depot, silo, and generator. Now, each of these pieces is under height 1, and they're fantastic for giving hard cover when you don't have enough space for a building. 2 of these, the silo and the fuel depot, can block individual minis, and the fuel depot can also block for a squad, whereas the generator is just wide enough to block for a single mini if the line of sight is perfect, as you can see here. Now, these pieces are great because they don't take up a whole lot of space, yet they add a lot of detail to your battlefield. And I'd say they're worth printing, especially with the Outer Rim territory set, just because they match the theme and they really break up the large amount of buildings that you have from the Outer Rim territory set. Next up is the communication tower. Now this building uses 1,150 grams of filament, has a 1 day, 2 hour, and 10-minute print time across 8 plates. Now there are 2 different versions of this tower. One uses magnets to attach the top cupola and the larger antennas, and the other one does not. Now I use the magnet version. That way I could transport this tower easily without breaking things. But you can use whatever version you'd like. Now I'm going to show you this tower in broken down into pieces, mainly because it's so large, it's hard to get on video. So here is the base tower, the base of the tower, and I'm going to throw an ATST for scale here, ATRT, and I'll even throw a little Geonosian in the front. Now, this tower is very tall, and it really, really draws everybody's attention to your table when you're using it. As you can see, this is got a wide base, which makes this relatively stable if the tower is completely attached, not using magnets. When you're using magnets, the top cupola is kind of loose, so you can't just grab it like this and shake it from the top. The top cupola will come off. As you can see, there are 8 smaller antennas that stick off from the top. I glued these in, but in retrospect, I would have liked to have put little magnets on the ends and inset inside of there. That way they could be removed without breaking, because I have snapped 1 or 2 of them. Not fully, but enough where I could glue it back on. So that's the base, and this is the top cupola. Now, as you can see, there are magnets in the top here. There are 2 of them, and they attach like so. So this is where it is. You can see it's a little bit of effort, and this is loose. And it does allow you to attach the top cupola in either matching the front door, the elevator, or having it rotated all the way around. Now, this is personal preference about, again, the door matching. I did find out with this model, and it could be that it's been updated since then, but the magnets on the bottom, this profile, as you can see, it's not actually quite centered. The magnets aren't centered with the indentation. And so there's a little bit of an overhang on one side compared to the other when you're attaching it to the top of the tower. So there are magnets on the top here. There are magnets on the sides here. And you can just attach your antenna like so. And so that makes it a lot easier to transport in one piece. And so here we go. This is about how big the walkway is on top. It's just wide enough for a standard mini template and nothing else. When you attach the tower, this is actually taller than height 3. And you can see that in the image that I'm showing you right now. So when we play, we just say this is height 3. And because there's no height 4, there's no jump 4 in Star Wars Legion, at least not yet. There's a jump 3. The only units that can use it are Geonosians or any unit that has a jump move along with, I think it's grappling hooks. So this is a very fun terrain piece. It doesn't really provide a whole lot of cover at the base, and that's kind of the point. It's just a tower, just draws attention to the table, and it's beloved by the group here. And I love this piece. It like I said, it draws people to the table. So if you're looking to build your community of players there, this is the piece for you. And another thing to note, one more time, I'll just say it again. When you put this cupola on top, you can see I'm just shaking a little bit and it's rattling. And so you want to make certain that any other players that are at your table know that when they grab this terrain piece by the neck, that they need to grab the cupola off the top first. Otherwise, it's going to fall off. it's going to hit the table, and if you're unfortunate or unlucky, it's going to crush one or two of your minis. So this is the show piece of this terrain set. War Scenery always seems to have one piece that kind of stands out on its own compared to the rest of them, and I would say that that's this. You could make an argument that maybe the landing station would be another one, but it's this just because of the height and just how tall it is. So if you're looking for purchasing any of these pieces individually, this would probably be my pick, just based on I like centerpieces. I like pieces that bring people's attention to the table and bring new players into the game. Next up is the family Abode. This building uses 360 grams of filament and has a 10-hour print time across 2 plates. This building is also under height 1, and it's just a rectangular building. It provides line of sight blocking capabilities to ATR T-size minis and smaller, and is wide enough to put vehicles and turrets on top. Now it is rectangular. It's There's not a whole lot to this building other than outside details. So you can see here, there's a platform on the left-hand side for storage. This prints as one piece. It's not something that you just glue on there, as you can see here. And here's the back. You got the sign, which I made it look like it's glowing as best I could. Now this tank here actually is a separate piece that you print off, and then you will you can glue it on afterwards, or you can choose not to, and you'll just have a little notch here on the building. And then obviously you've got the door in the back, which if you want to, you can glue it in, or if not, you can just not have it on there. So this is just a rectangular building. There's not a whole lot to it, but it is great to have on the battlefield because it is a smaller building. It's not super large. It can hide 1 or 2 units of infantry on either side of it, and but it's not too tall where you can't jump over it with say Anakin or any other Jedi. Next up is the Herbalist. This building uses 410 grams of filament and has a 9-hour and 45-minute print time across 2 plates. Now this building is a joy to have on the field. It is under height 1, but it does provide line of sight blocking capabilities to ATRT size units or smaller. One of the things that I love about this building is the fact that it has stairs. It has multiple different levels that you can fight on. So here you go on the front, go on the left-hand side here. You can see with the plants. Now this piece is separate, so you can paint this separated and then glue it into place afterwards, as you can see here. As you can see here. Get the video to focus. There we go. As you can see, there's 3 different levels, including not including the ground floor, so that actually creates 4. And stairs are just fun in Star Wars Legion because, at least in our group, if you're using the stairs, you don't actually have to slow down your movement speed as long as your movement stick follows the stairs. So this is a favorite, again, because you can put POI tokens on top. You can even put turreted minis on top, like a Rebel FD laser cannon. Climbing vehicles go on top, and it's the top. The roof is wide enough for you to be able to put your air speeders or your fluttercraft or even a lat base on it. And so that gives you a lot of options to move over and on top of the building, and adds a lot more options in your battlefield. Next up is the landing station. This platform uses 1,200 grams of filament and has a 1-day, 2-hour print time across 6 plates. Now, this building or landing platform is a very large piece. As you can see in the renders, the platform is split into 4 quarters, bottom and top. The walls, you have the silo here on the back end, and then you have the ramp leading up the left-hand side. I have seen where people will print all the pieces together, but assemble the landing platform and then keep the building and the ramp separate from that. So you could separate it and you'll have a wall for one and a landing platform that's just raised up for another. That's not something that I did. I glued it together as one piece, but you don't have to do that. You can assemble this building however you'd like. Now, this building is large enough to block line of sight for an ATRT going across if the mini is behind the panels. It does block line of sight just going across in general, except for maybe if you're firing between these panels going across from something that has a higher line of sight. It is both under and over height 1, depending on which part of the station you're looking at. And the platform is large enough to land multiple different vessels. So here we are with the quad jumper, fits right there nice and snug. Or you could do something smaller, like say an A-wing, or even the Star Tours. They all fit. It is too small for say an X-wing, and even the TIE interceptors and the TIE fighters. Although I think the TIE fighter might fit, but I just don't have it on me to find out. Now, just give another sense of scale for this. There's Cad Bane right in the middle, and here is Dooku just hiding underneath. Now, this is a great piece to have, especially if you're going to be putting a POI token on top. And that's because it just gives you a platform to duke it out on. Adding vehicles on there complicates the movement of minis, but it's an option. I do enjoy this building because it blocks line of sight, and so you'll get units stacked up on both left and right hand sides, and then the next turn they just either fight on top, fight around, or a mix of the two. So this is a great piece. It's a great centerpiece for this set, and just the size of it gives you plenty of options both tactically and thematically. Next up is the listening station. This model used 360 grams of filament and had a 10-hour print time across 2 plates. Now this building is both under and over height 1, depending on which part of the building you're looking at. And it's fantastic building for what it is. As you can see here, here's how the ATRT stacks up. It is shorter than the building on the right hand side and obviously shorter on the left hand side, but you can definitely see over the top to hit an ATRT from the other side of the building. There are parts on this building where you can stand minis up and they will stay, but not every place is like that. It also will depend on if your mini has some kind of weight on it or not. Now, this model, as I said before, is fantastic, and the main reason is that it has a lot of detail for such a relatively small building. And I say it's relatively small because it is larger than most, but compared to some of the others in this set, it is on the small side. And I just love the detail that this model has. I love the asymmetric components to it. It's fantastic to have on the field and just pops. Next up is the Modular Fence. This model used 100 grams of filament and had a 5-hour, 15-minute print time across the single plate. Now, I just printed what is shown in the image, and that includes 2 fence posts on both sides and 2 fence pieces on both sides. You also have your arch, and then the roof part is a separate piece, and then there's a little spacer in between that helps align the top and the bottom together. I printed it, and for some reason, mine did not fit properly, so this wasn't flush, so I just glued it together without it. So this piece is great for aesthetic purposes where you just want to have maybe some farmland, or you want to have maybe a grazing area and you want to throw some animals in here just as some weird cover. That's what it can be used for. You can also print out more of these fence posts and fence pieces and just add them on around here. But when you're printing this model out, if you're choosing to print this model out, you really do need to print out at least 2 fence pieces and posts at an angle, because this arch will barely stand on its own without any kind of support. As you can see just how wobbly it is. I mean, it's wobbling, and it will tip over without these supports. So just keep that in mind. You will have to have something attached, glued on, whatever. to this arch to keep it from tipping over. And then you can expound upon this as much as you want. Now, another thing you can do with this is the fence pieces themselves. They can provide zero cover whatsoever, but they can impede movement. So maybe you have to slow down to speed 1 to hop over it. It kind of adds to the complexity of the terrain on your gaming table. So I'm going to put some pieces out here for scale. There's your little, I'd say, snow trooper, or I call him a desert trooper now, because I've handed him desert camo. So there's an emplacement trooper. There's your shore trooper mortar. And then I'll show you that even though the dewback fits through this, the head is actually impacting the bottom of the arch. So you can't quite fit him under, but you can fit the base size underneath. And it is obviously too tall to, I lost his gun, too tall to put an ATRT underneath. And it is not wide enough to place the base for the FD laser cannon or the X34 through it. So that just lets you know the limitations for this model. It does not use a lot of filament, and the print time is really only in the arch. I think afterwards, just to print these 2 posts and these 2 fence pieces, it may have been 15-20 minutes. So if you want to, once the arch is printed, you can build larger fence segments in a small amount of time. So this is a great add-on to your terrain set if you want to add something that's not really heavy cover and add a little more complexity to your gaming table. Next up is Natoshoo's Cantina. This model uses 1,600 grams of filament and has a 1-day, 15-hour print time across 8 plates. Now, this model is very large. It's kind of like a showpiece model for the set. Now, I've glued all the pieces for the roof together. So it's just one piece removable. That makes it easier for transportation and assembly when I get there. But then you also have the bottom, which is made up of many different pieces to assemble. As you can see, there is an interior. So if you want to use this for any other kind of wargaming or D&D or RPG, then you'd be able to do so. And you can paint it up however you want before you assemble it, which is what I recommend, and then assemble it. Again, a very large model. And one of the things that I love about this model is that you can kind of design your game type around it. So I really like to have this set up either in the center or on the sides where a POI token would be. That way you can place the POI token on top, and it allows you and your opponent to kind of duke it out. So it kind of becomes an arena or a focal point where you can duke things out. As you can see, there's plenty of room for a POI token up top. There's also plenty of room for any emplacement, an FD turret, anything like that. You can get vehicles up here if you wanted. So if you wanted to get, say, an ATRT up there, or any other climbing vehicle, any of your droid troopers, your spider droids. So there's an ATRT. It blocks line of sight for the lower level for things like your ATRTs or your GAV tanks, but it can also block line of sight for things like your ATSTs, depending on the angle that you're being shot at from your opponent. So, especially for the upper part, for the raised cupolas on the second floor, definitely can block line of sight. So this gives you a little more protection for your vehicles if you're trying to get them around to a point or a target. But this is a very complicated model. There are a lot of little pieces, and there are also a lot of fragile little pieces, especially these right here. These shutters can pop off really easy, especially if you bump something against it. You can see some of these aren't even straight. Here, I'm going to pop one off just so you can see it. Just pop right off. And you can glue these shutters shut if you wanted to. I kind of like how they are right now, and I think I might have it as I start to lose these during use. I'll just leave them off, and eventually it'll just not have shutters. But there are a lot of little bits. The antennas are very easy to damage. The sign I've kind of popped off once or twice, had to reprint it and glue it back in. It's just something that you have to be cognizant of how large this model is before you do anything with it. But it's great to have on the field, and it really draws people's eyes because they'll see it and go, "Wow, you have a huge building there," and it's larger than anything else, at least area-wise, than anything else in this set. and that just makes it stand out all the more from everything else in this terrain set. Next up is Ott's Shop. This building uses 500 grams of filament and has a 7-hour print time across 2 plates. Now this building is also under height 1 and provides line of sight blocking capabilities to ATRTs and other smaller vehicles and minis. This building has 2 main levels. You could count this as a 3rd level if you so choose, but it really just has 2. But it has a staircase on the other side, and then I love staircases because they can change the rules of movement um, in your match. I also am missing the top half of the antenna. I've printed this out 2 separate times, but I just keep snapping it off. So at this point, I'm just going to leave the bottom half of the antenna on there and just not worry about it. It looks great, though. If you can keep yours from breaking, I would highly recommend you print that little piece off. But if not, then just kind of do what I do. So go in for a closer look here. You got this little canopy on top, which you can set a mini on, but the base is hanging over the edge, so it wouldn't technically be field legal. There we go with more details. Simple back end there. You got some food vending. The entranceway with the sign. So this is a fun building. It's asymmetrical. It's got a staircase, got multiple different levels. It's not entirely large, so it doesn't block off one section of your battlefield. And this is, again, one of my favorites for this part of the collection. We have scattered terrain sets 1 and 2. Combined, they'll use 170 grams of total filament and have a print time of 11 hours and 40 minutes across 2 plates. Now that's just to print one of everything, and as you can see here, I do not have one of everything. In some cases, I am missing items, and others I have multiple prints, such as the crates here. I printed 3 of these up, stacked them together, glued them together, and primed and painted them. And that's just because I don't like to have individual scattered terrain pieces. I like to have them grouped up, glued together. That way I can just grab one item out and there's my light terrain or my scatter terrain. So all of these I've used as light terrain, except for the water tower here. The water tower uses heavy terrain, but it only provides heavy cover, not line of sight blocking, because the legs underneath are exposed. Another fun piece is this bazaar here. It's is very flimsy, as I have broken the posts on these multiple times. And another thing is I've actually glued some items in here, such as this tank here. I glued that in here. That was another individual scatter terrain piece. And these are relatively short. I mean, they're not going to block line of sight for most minis unless you group them together like so. But they're fun little scatter terrain pieces. They don't take a whole lot of filament to print. They don't take a whole lot of time to print individually. And they're really easy to paint, especially if you're just trying to get something on the board. You can just throw a white base on top and then use some contrast paints just to add some color to it. Next up is the Tinker's Workbench. This model uses 235 grams of filament and has a 6-hour and 30-minute print time across the single plate. This model is under height 1, but it is not tall enough to block line of sight for an ATRT if you have something that is like height or shooting from a distance. But it is obviously tall enough to block a standard mini. This is how they look underneath. This model is small. It's very similar in size to the listening station, except it's is not as tall. It is flat on top, so you can put minis and even climbing vehicles on top of it. There's a lot of detail on the front side, as you can see here, and there's not as much detail on the back, but it really doesn't need to be. This building is great for having near, say, POIs where you want to have something that is angled, so that your firing angles are going to be different depending on which side of the building you are compared to the other. It's a great building. It's got a lot of detail. It doesn't use a ton of filament, and its shape, it definitely stands out compared to the others. Next up is the vegetable dealer. This building uses 325 grams of filament and has a 9-hour and 40-minute print time across 2 plates. This building is also under height 1, but does provide line of sight blocking capabilities to ATRTs and other minis and vehicles that are smaller than that. This building is a standard rectangular shape, but it does have a slope on the edge. So one thing that you'll be able to do is put, again, turrets or other vehicles on top. So here's some of the details. You can see the vegetables with the canopy. Now, one thing that you might note is that I don't have antennas on this, but in the image there are antennas. And the main reason for that is that I keep breaking them off. Now, this is something that I've probably said at least once in this video, but War Scenery has already solved this problem of the antennas breaking off, and that is they are now plug and play. So they have little connector pieces that will fit inside of holes such as this and the antenna that you're attaching to. And so you can snap them on and off, or if you hit them hard enough, they'll pop out instead of breaking. So that is definitely a feature that they've improved upon in later releases. Not in this one, but in later releases. But having the antennas in this doesn't really add a whole lot to it. So I'm not really missing them, and I probably won't print them out to replace those that I've broken. Again, this is a rectangular building. It does have a slope here, and depending on where your mini sits, it may or may not be able to stand on it. I have not been able to get one to sit on there, but there's always a first time like that. There you go. So it's just going to depend on which part of the slope they're on. But it is a 2-layered building. You can even put minis over here if they're standalone. They're not part of another unit. And it's just a great small building to have in your battlefield. Next up is the workshop and smithy. These buildings use 535 grams of filament and have a 15-hour, 10-minute print time across 3 plates. Now, this is technically 2 buildings with the smithy and the workshop that can be attached together with this portal here. The building is under height 1 and provides line of sight blocking capabilities to ATRT in smaller vehicles. Now, it is too small to put an FD laser cannon on top, but you can put other emplacement troopers on there, like your mortar troopers or your Mark IIs. You can fit minis on there, like your spider droids and crab droids, but that's about as large of a base you can get. As you can see, it's the same base here as ATRT. Now, this building can be printed as 2 separate buildings and never assembled together. You can have one building here, and just not have the portal. I chose to glue the portal in place, and maybe later in the future I'll break that off and have it not be attached. That way I can separate the smithy and the workshop from each other. But the portal does provide a fun little aspect where you can split between the buildings, but you still have line of sight blocking capabilities from the larger part of the workshop or the smaller part of the smithy. Now, I'm going to try to show you the details on this. This is going to be a little difficult with the shape of it, but it does have a staircase. And as you can tell from this video, I do love staircases. And we got a little signage here underneath. There's not a whole lot of detail to this model compared to some of the others, but there's enough on here to make it stand out. This is an optional piece you can print out, and when I printed this, these shelves, I thought they were baskets that you stand up like so, but they aren't. They are supposed to go on the back end. I didn't see that until I was making this video that, hey, that's part of this building. There's an awning there, more detailed paneling. And so again, portal's large enough to pass minis through it. As you can see, I can pass this one with the lightsaber standing up. No issues. You'll be able to put emplacement troopers under there if you need to. Again, I love this building mainly because it's asymmetrical. It's got stairs, got different levels, and it just stands out on the field. And it's great when you have POIs nearby because the shape, the triangular shape of these buildings, um, really complicates the tactics that you would use in a match. And so there are different ways you could maybe attack a POI that's on the other side. You go through the portal, but that's a choke point. You can go over the top through a jump or hop on top and fire from above. So you'll have cover. There are just many different options that you can use with this building. And so I really enjoy having this one out on the battlefield. There is something that I forgot to mention earlier in the show, and that is that you can print off these little footbridges that link two buildings together, and they'll allow you to move minis across without using the jump ability or scale ability. And it's just something that you can use. I've only used them once or twice, mainly because we usually have our buildings spread out. But if you are a fan of like tightly congested urban combat battlefields, then this is definitely something you're going to want to print out and use in your matches. So, in summary, this is a fantastic terrain set. It basically gives you 2 tables worth of terrain if you purchase the bundle, and they're 2 distinct tables. One is, I would consider that more of an outer rim frontier with the what I painted as the red roofed buildings, and that one kind of feels more like a moss, whatever you'd want to call it, whether it's a desert terrain or arid or anything like that. And then you also have the ones that I just painted gray buildings, and that's more of a cityscape. So you see maybe that was more densely packed and urban. So I much prefer the more frontiery buildings just because they're more asymmetrical. But there's a lot more verticality to the urban buildings. So it's kind of hard to pick your favorite. You know, there's some things that you like more on one than the other, and vice versa. But in the end, I highly recommend this set, either individual pieces or the bundle as a whole. Now remember, if you like any of the products that you saw here in this video, you can either purchase them individually from War Scenery's website, which the link can be found in the description below, or you can purchase them as a bundle when you join any of War Scenery's Kickstarters. Now, if you purchase any of these models from their website, don't forget to use the discount code that you see on the screen right now. That is Rogue Group 20. It'll give you a 20% discount on all purchases through their online website. And that concludes this episode. Stay tuned for the next one, and don't forget to like and subscribe.